So the Broncos really going to trade away some of their assets before the trade deadline coming up on November 1st. I got to tell you, my phone has been bothering me, as it regularly does. It's orange and blue today. It is Cecil, Lammey. It is Andrew Mason. And Mace, I don't like my phone. I don't like answering my phone. I don't like texting on my phone. I basically don't like my phone. And today I really don't like it because a lot of people I know are reaching out to be like, are the Broncos really trading Jerry Jeudy? Well, yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know if it necessarily takes the London game to determine if the Broncos are going to be buyers or sellers. Just depends on what kind of offers they could get for a Jerry Jeudy, for a Bradley Chubb, maybe others, which we may discuss today.
Yeah, and I'm going to have a column on this on denverfan.com later on tonight. If they're making a decision as to whether to trade a player based on Sunday's result, they're foolish.
Right.
One game against a 2-5 team on a 4-game losing streak should in no way impact a longer term decision like trading a player, and specifically because his name did come up with Mike Florio Pro Football Talk earlier, specifically with Bradley Chubb. You shouldn't make that decision based on the result. You shouldn't make that decision based on Baron Browning missing a few games or getting Randy Gregory back. These are short-term considerations. You need to be thinking long-term over the horizon and not just about what's best for the next few weeks or even the rest of this season.
Yeah, and what I can't stand, Mason, you and I have done this long enough to know that there's a lot of people that just guess in this industry. Now, some people are fed information and they run with that information, and we watch and we learn and we know who to listen to. But when CBS Sports just has an anonymous report that Jerry Jeudy could be going to the Giants or the Packers or the Colts, I'm like, they're guessing. They're guessing. Unless you put a name on it, and that name is someone we can point to and say, okay, that's a good guy, that's a good woman, that's a good person, reporter that has good information. When it's anonymous like that, like the CBS Sports report was, I just like, meh, whatever. And hell, Florio's about the same way too.
Well, CBS in particular, they like listicles, and very much that is a site. And I say this knowing a couple people that work over there.
Oh yeah,
CBS is a website that in their NFL coverage, there's a lot of throwing stuff at a wall and seeing if it sticks.
Yep. And so then everyone will pick up on the headline and be like, the Broncos are going to trade Jerry Jeudy to the Giants. Like, I know the Giants had like a disgruntled Kenny Golladay. They don't use. Do they want a disgruntled Jerry Jeudy? Maybe Jeudy gets a fresh start and is whatever. But like, yeah, okay, everyone, let's just calm down. Let's see what the Broncos could get, because people are saying like fire sale and all this. And while you and I agree, getting some picks for next year is great, we also need to be the vanguard, Mace, and reminding people that it's just next year. The year after that, they've got a full breadth of picks.
Right. They do. And it is getting through to this draft cycle. It's all about this draft cycle. They're fine when they get beyond this. They've already taken half of the blow of the Russell Wilson trade in terms of draft capital. Now, of course, obviously the cap space and the contract, that's something for another day. And that's why you're going to have to nail draft picks in the future. But that being said, when you look at just the overall construction here of the roster, and you look at players that are coming along, for example, Baron Browning, even though he's hurt, and that's why, again, don't focus on the fact that he's going to miss time right now and not be available. Focus on what your plan is for him over the long term. And the thing with Bradley Chubb and the reason to trade him would be, let's say you get a late round 1 pick back, or let's say it's a Von Miller type deal, a round 2 and a round 3 pick. The bottom line is, Cecil, you're going to have to rebuild this offensive line. And sometimes to rebuild a unit and to get personnel in there to rebuild that unit, whether it's in terms of draft picks coming in or having the cap space to do it, you're going to have to sacrifice another position where you have a higher level of depth. The Broncos, in terms of their edge rushers, and it's remarkable to say this a year after trading Von Miller, the Broncos, in terms of quality and depth on the edge, they are stacked. Now, it's being tested because you have an unusual wave of injuries, because Randy Gregory is on IR, Aaron Patrick's out for the season, but even he showed some flashes. Right. And then, of course, Baron Browning is dealing with the hip issue. But the Broncos are blessed enough with depth to where even with all those injuries on Sunday, they can throw Nick Bonito out there. And although he's got a long way to go against the run, he's got some pass rush moves already, and they can throw Jonathan Cooper out there, who's had some quarterback hits in the last few weeks when he's rotated in. The Broncos are blessed with depth at that position, and that depth has been tested. And by and large, Cecil, it's passed the test so far this year,
Yes.
which is why you think about trading Bradley Chubb in order to use that you get in return to shore up a position of what appears to be a pretty desperate need right now.
Right. And then you could use that pick to move up to the pick. Like you just need assets so that you have poker chips so that you can, just because they get, let's say, a third rounder for Bradley Chubb doesn't mean they're staying. Right.
Right.
You can package that and something else and move up.
Well, if they only got a third, I wouldn't do the deal. Only around 3 pick, I'd be like, no. If we get to a 2 and a 3, now we're talking. If you get to even a late one, and I personally think, Cecil, the team that does make the most sense to trade for Bradley Chubb is the Philadelphia Eagles. And if the deal involves that first round pick of their own, because I can't imagine they'll trade that pick they got from the Saints, which looks like a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
But because they have that pick, they can afford to look at a Chubb on the market and think, okay, could he be the final piece that allows us to go from merely contending for to actually really being able to win it all this year? They have a cost-controlled quarterback that helps make that possible. And so it's the kind of deal where if you're doing the matchmaker thing, it's the kind of thing that makes sense, is mutually beneficial for both sides.
And I love the fact that, and I guess I'll give credit to Sean McVay or whoever, like, push your chips in, man. When the Jets made the move for James Robinson, I was like, golf clap, golf clap. I don't think the Jets make any sort of Super Bowl run, but that's a team that's won more games than anyone thought they would.
Yeah.
They've got momentum. They lose Breece Hall, who's an incredibly talented running back. And they go out and get James Robinson, who's a really good, potential starter, splitting time with Michael Carter. Like, that's the type of move. If you're Philadelphia, look at Bradley Chubb, and that's your Von Miller move. By the way, the Broncos also traded away Malik Reed. We often forget about him with Pittsburgh. So their depth has been tested at the pass rusher position, but you can never have too many pass rushers. So dangle it out there and see what you get. And it'll be interesting to see what they get back.
And another reason to think about that as well is there are some times where you trust your scouting and you trust your development. In the mid-2010s, for example, the Broncos didn't need to use a high draft pick on an inside linebacker because they had good identification of guys in the late rounds and beyond who could do that job very well. They picked Danny Trevathan, and I believe it was round 6 in 2012. They got Brandon Marshall off the scrap heap, basically. Jaguar, they put him on their practice squad.
And then the Saints had Todd Davis. They pulled Todd Davis from the Saints practice squad.
So they were able to find 3 good to very good players who did a good job for multiple years on some very good defenses because they knew what they were looking for. I mean, the Broncos clearly, like in the 2010s, they were deficient at scouting quarterbacks. I mean, we don't need to belabor that, right? But they knew what they were doing with inside linebackers, being able to find talent. And I think one thing you can say about George Paton right now, in terms of Baron Browning, Jonathan Cooper being a 7th-round pick who's been a very good rotational player, they seem to know what they're looking for at edge rusher. So I think you kind of trust that and then say, all right, we need to find offensive linemen in other ways because that appears to be an area where the Broncos aren't so good at identifying talent from the lower rounds to find guys who can contribute.
Yeah, and Cooley Cool says, it's sad we're even having this conversation. It's like, yeah, I get it, man. It's not even the bye week, and we're talking about being sellers and next year's draft and all that. Should I, Mace, and this is your call, so I'll just forward all my @replies to you. And I kid, because I love that. I already told you who my out of the box, and it's not really out of the box if you think about it, who my out of the box trade person would be. Should I reveal that to our viewing audience today on Orange and Blue?
Please do.
Justin Simmons.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it because he's such a great man and he's a fine player and you want to say best safety in the league, whatever. But if you need draft capital, and I consider Pat Surtain untouchable and Russell Wilson obviously not going anywhere, those are the only 2. Everyone else, if you come with the right deal for Justin Simmons, if you're George Payton, you should listen. And that's a deal that should be able to get you a haul back. Simmons with the good contract. I don't think he's overpaid. I don't think it's outlandish. It's not cheap, to be sure. It's a good contract. It's a fair deal. You get a great player, great in the community, all these sorts of things. But desperate times call for desperate measures. If you get the right offer, then maybe a fan favorite like Justin Simmons, because Jerry Jeudy gets traded. Most Broncos fans are going to be like, get him out of here, right?
Yeah.
And Bradley Chubb, people will be like, oh man, it's injuries and what might have been with Bradley Chubb. Trading Justin Simmons would be painful, but if there's a reward to it, then that's what you have to focus on. The long-term health of the Broncos is much better than anything that happens this year. They're not going anywhere this year. And that means, sitting Russ, even though he's probably going to play Sunday. Like, there's all these sorts of things. Like, you take the long-term view. That's what's best for the Broncos. It's one of the reasons why I was so mad at Gary Kubiak, Mace. Did you know that? Because
mad at Kubiak?
I was mad at Kubes.
6 years past that.
Yeah, I know. But I'm bitter. I hold on to things. Because for me, the faster you knew Paxton Lynch was a bum, the better off your team was. And when Gary made the personal decision, it was his decision not to play Paxton in that game against the Raiders. No, trot his dumbass out there, allegedly, or whatever I have to say, and see what you got. Because when you find out you don't have it, you can wash it away. You can move on quickly. And that game, I know it was Gary's last game, and he didn't want it because he hated Paxton or allegedly or whatever. But like, you got to think of the Broncos long term. The Broncos long term might not have Justin Simmons.
Right. And, at least he should have played the second half. I mean, there was absolutely no reason not to pay Paxton that day. Now, let's talk about Justin Simmons real quick, because I don't think that's realistic right now, even though I believe that basically pretty much anybody not named Sir Tanner Wilson, as Coley Cool was saying, outside of Sir Tanner Wilson, everyone is on the block. I'd say, yeah, aside from those two, probably everybody is somebody that you'd listen to if a trade offer was proffered from a team. But the thing about Simmons is this, and why I don't think anything would happen right now. And you and I talked about this off air, but there's a very good chance he's the Walter Payton Man of the Year this year. He's been a finalist a couple of times. It's very important for the Broncos organizationally. They want to see him win Walter Payton Man of the Year. Because of that, organizationally, I do not see any way that he is traded. Right? I just don't. I don't see that at all right now. You get to the offseason, if he has that Walter Payton Man of the Year, you get to the offseason and get some calls, maybe you think about it. But right now, it's not something that I see. And yes, if they did trade him, it would hurt. But I think there are reasons why we would not see anything like that in play right now.
All right, it's Orange and Blue today. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason, Broncos, and London take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't know if I'll write about this or tweet about this or just say it on this show and then never repeat it again, Mace. But what the results on Sunday have very little matter to the end of the season, to the overall. I'm already in big picture mode, and it does suck. Everybody's mad. I get it, but they would need a 4-game win streak before I get excited about the current incarnation. If they win on Sunday, it's Jacksonville, man. 2-5. Like, it's not go Shania Twain. It don't impress me much.
You beat the Titans coming out of the bye. That impresses me. You string together wins. That impresses me. You beat the Jaguars, who, by the way, are in a very similar situation as yourselves. If you're the Denver Broncos, they're on a 4-game losing streak. They're viewing this game this week as their get-right week, right? It's like the Spider-Man memes, the two Spider-Mans pointing at each other, right? Okay, they got to this spot in different ways. The Jaguars have a pretty effective offense. Their struggles are primarily on the defensive side. The Broncos are the opposite there, but it's very much like these two teams are staring at each other in the mirror at this point. Like the different, instead it's like one is the left hand, one is the right hand, but they're pointing back at each other in the same way. And because of that, I think it's important to have a realistic view of this game. The Broncos are I don't think they're the 30th best team in the NFL, as Pro Football Talk asserted on its power rankings Tuesday. I don't think they're that bad. You look at them, and I believe they're 22nd in DVOA. My friends over at Football Outsiders, they're 19th in point differential right now. I think those actually better reflect where the Broncos are, but that doesn't mean they're a good team. It means they're a team on the low end of mediocre. So, and if you beat the Jaguars, you're beating another team that's on the low end of mediocre.
Right. So what are you really doing?
Yeah. There we go.
This.
Yes. That's what this is. That is Sunday's game right there.
You guys suck. You're 2-5. You guys suck. You're 2-5.
The Spider-Man on the right is pointing with the left hand. That's the team that has the great defense and no offense. The Spider-Man on the left is pointing with the right hand. That's a team with a pretty good offense and a team that can't stop anybody right now. They are mirror images of each other. That is this game. And this is probably hard for a lot of for Broncos fans to accept, but this is where you are with the Jacksonville Jaguars, who were terrible the last 2 years. These two teams, they took different paths to get to the same spot.
We got to clip that. But it'll go viral, right? Mason, Spider-Man, and the Broncos. Well, if that's the case, and I obviously agree that's the case, then for me it comes down to who's got the better quarterback, who's got the better head coach. And, well, that's Jacksonville.
Yeah.
That's Jacksonville, because Trevor Lawrence is young and he's still learning. At least he's flashed this year. Like last year, because Trevor Lawrence was one of those guys, and I rarely do this. I did it for Andrew Luck. Rarely do this with any quarterback, but that's one of those guys that's like, it's generational.
Mm-hmm.
It's, John Elway, it's Peyton Manning. And last year, Trevor Lawrence looked like crap, except for one game, and it was the season finale. Well, he's taken that momentum over to this season. He's still rough, still young, but you see the flashes of greatness there within him. So him, Doug Peterson, who's, I'm not going to say a buddy of mine, but I kind of know him a little bit. Thanks to our friends in Kansas City, Mace, when Peterson was back with the Chiefs. But like, I really like Doug Peterson. I really like Trevor Lawrence. Russell Wilson's hurt, and I don't think Nathaniel Hackett's a good coach.
Even last year, during the depths of the Urban Meyer era, there were flashes from Trevor Lawrence every game. I mean, if for those watching and listening who recall week 2 when the Broncos went down to Jacksonville, that opening drive, he was dropping dimes on the Broncos defense. And the touchdown pass that put the Jaguars up early in that game, that was a thing of beauty on Trevor Lawrence's part. If you believe in Trevor Lawrence, you've seen something every game that says, that's why I thought he was a generational prospect. We're seeing more of the flashes now and less of the really bad stuff. Competent coaching does matter. I also think, and I'm probably making an excuse for T-Law at this point, but I almost don't count last year because the administration of that team from Urban Meyer was so awful. I mean, I think we can say this, you and I, with some certainty. Urban Meyer, the worst NFL head coach in our lifetime.
Yeah.
And
we're talking like Bobby Petrino,
Nick
Saban, right?
Worse than Petrino. Petrino. Nick Saban had a 9-7 season with Miami, with Gus Frerotte getting most of the snaps that year back in 05. Okay, I mean, there were other things that did Saban in other than his coaching capability. He was a decent NFL coach. Urban Meyer failed in every way that you can imagine, and really failed right from the start with the snafu over hiring a strength coach who had a history of racist statements.
Right.
So
the proper vetting, and I listen, like, I think you and I can respect Shad Khan. You and I both know Tony Khan.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I like those guys. Like, come on. I like a lot of people around that Jacksonville organization, but it was just you do everything, Urban, and when you do that, you kind of blind to what they're doing and who they're hiring. Like, this is the result.
Yeah, and I mean, it felt like fan service, right? That you had all these Florida Gator fans in the Jacksonville area, and that you give them Urban, and it's gonna work out. Well, it didn't. And by the way, I think they They didn't realize how a lot of Florida fans felt. The Gator fans who are also Jaguar fans, I can tell you that they don't simply believe you get a Gator, put him in Jacksonville, and it's going to work. I remember going to Jacksonville in 2010 and seeing fans that were wearing Tuck Febo shirts that were Gator fans. I know, I talked to them, but they're smart enough to know college football is different than pro football. Jacksonville has smart fans too, right?
Right.
There may not be as many of them as with a lot of other fan bases in the NFL, but they've got smart fans, and so the notion that you just you sell this Florida Gator legend to come in and fix it, a lot of fans weren't buying that from the beginning, even the fans that you were aiming that move at. So some of the moves have been mystifying, and you're right. You mentioned Shad Khan and Tony Khan. You got people that are smart enough to know better, and I think they finally actually got a workable, viable situation in place down there. I'm still keeping Trent Baalke around. I'm not on board with that. That's one thing that still you kind of scratch your head about.
Right.
But they've got enough people in that building who know what they're doing. And now Trevor Lawrence is getting some good coaching. You're starting to see the results. The flashes are becoming more frequent game after game. And it's not out of the question that they get better in the second half of the season. And the Jaguars feel like it's going to start Sunday. They feel like this is their get-right game.
Yep. Playing at their home stadium.
Yeah. I think I heard once that in terms of the money they make off of a game at Wembley, that it equals 3 or 4 games in Jacksonville in terms of their profit.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, it's a cash cow. Now, here's something interesting though. For this game, there are plenty of tickets to be had on the secondary market at reasonably affordable prices. Right now, the euro and the dollar are basically 1-to-1 in terms of an exchange rate. Right. So you go on StubHub International and look up Jaguars Broncos at Wembley Stadium, and you can get in for 62 euros. That's the buy-in. It's about $62. It's not much more than last week. The buy-in was $40 here in Denver. So, they've sold tickets, but there's maybe not the same enthusiasm that we expected. Of course, that's part and parcel with having a couple of 2-5 teams coming to London. And that's another thing, Cecil. The London audience, they've seen enough NFL games by this point on television, and then, of course, the games in person, to where you can't sell these fans a lemon anymore, right?
Right.
This is not 1991 when you could feed them what was then known as the World League and expect 61,000 people to come out and watch Stan Gelbaugh, Larry Kennan, and the London Monarchs play. England, the NFL fans in England know what good football looks like, know what it doesn't look like. Right. And I think one reason why you see so many tickets available on the open market right now over there is they know that these are two shaky teams coming in, and they're like, we've seen better. We've seen better in recent weeks.
Our friend Nate says Mace got that London hooligan look going on.
I guess I got the flat cap.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, the last time I was there and I was walking around the streets kind of dressed like this. I had a vest, and somebody asked me where was the tube stop, and I pointed, and then they were shocked. I'm like, "You're okay?" Like, I didn't think you'd have an American accent. I guess I really looked local as I was walking around. I looked like somebody who just belonged there, like this was my turf. So it's kind of interesting. I do feel very much at home in London. I do.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go. All right. It is orange and blue today, and we're going to have a conversation on the DenverFan.com PM edition, Mace.
Yes, we are
tonight. Yeah. So
look out, world.
Love orange and blue today. Then listen in 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. It's Andrew Mason, and we'll be doing DenverFan.com PM edition tonight on the Fan. So we thank everyone for watching. We really, really appreciate you. The response to this show has been very big, and we appreciate the support, even through all the bad times for the Broncos. Like, we've launched a new show, It's around the Denver Broncos, and you guys are responding to it in kind. So we appreciate you, and we thank you very much. As always, stay safe, be kind, know you're appreciated. He's Mace. I'm Cecil. Everyone, thanks for watching. Stay tuned and stay frosty.